Okay, so our topic for today is introduction. So we are in module 2, and module 2 is understanding social and environmental impact assessment. And our topic for this session 1 is introduction, principle, and objective of environmental and social impact assessment. So my name is Professor Cosmos Ujowondo. So I will be the one taking you for this course. So this is the outline. Please, whenever you're not seeing my screen, you let me know. Okay? So we'll start from the introduction we'll now go into environmental and social impact assessment, which is the crux of this particular session. We'll also look at the principles, objective, and of environmental and social impact assessment. We're now going to environmental and social management system, then how to identify projects with high or moderate risk for environmental and social impact assessment. Then we'll look at ratings. Then we're also going to looking at some of the impacts that ESIA could be able to identify or determine. Then finally, we'll go into some case studies of ESIA. So what is the objective of this particular session? So the objectives include 1, to identify, evaluate, and manage environmental and social risk and impacts of projects in a manner that is consistent with ESSS, that's environmental and social standards. 2 is to adopt a mitigation. Somebody is, please, everybody should mute him or herself. Mute yourselves, please. You are my God. Mute yourselves. 3rd one is to adopt measures to protect this.
Yeah. Prof, sorry, please unmute yourself again, please.
So I've done that. Okay. So the number 5 there is to promote improved environmental and social performance in ways which recognizes and also enhance borrowers' capacity, because we're talking about those that might be sponsoring some of our projects. Then at the end of this course, it is expected that the student will be able to identify the environmental and social risk and impacts of any project. And we'll also be able to explain processes and methods of evaluating and how to identify and manage environmental and social risks and their impact in various projects. And also the student will be able to discuss the grievance mechanism, processes, or procedure to receive and facilitate resolution of concerns and grievances of projects, because definitely people, the stakeholders are supposed to be involved and they have their own complaints. Should be able to discuss how this mechanism will be able to accommodate them, and they will express their concerns concerning any project. And finally, it will highlight the significance of public participation in ESIA. Then we'll start from the introduction. So we start by asking, what is ESIA? What is environmental and social impact assessment, which we call ESIA? We say it's a process used to evaluate, mark those words, evaluate the potential environmental and social impact of a proposed project. Propose, it means that the ESIA must be carried out before a project is carried out. So the major word there is evaluate potential impact of a proposed project. So ESIA, what does it aim to do? It aims to assess, predict potential adverse and social and environmental impact. So you see the three key words there: assess, predict, social and environmental impact of a project. And how will he do that? After being able to assess and predict social impact of a project, the process will now help in developing suitable mitigation measures, because that is what ESIA helps to do. Being able to develop mitigation measures before a decision is taken concerning whether the project will go on or will not go on. And these mitigation measures are usually documented in a book or in a document called Environmental and Social Management Plan, which is the ESMP. We call it the Bible of ESIA, or we can also call it the law that must be followed of ESIA. So what is ESMP? ESMP consists of mitigation, monitoring, and institutional measures to be taken during the design, construction, and operation stages of a project. So we'll talk about it is set of mitigation, monitoring, and institutional measures, which we're going to look at as we go on. So, and what does it do? It helps to eliminate adverse environmental and social impacts. It also helps to offset this impact and also reduce them to a level, because whereby you cannot totally offset, you can also reduce to a level that is acceptable. So ESMP is often required by regulatory authorities or financing institutions as a condition for project approval. So for some project to be funded, for some project to be allowed to go on, you must be able to provide mitigation measures that will be documented in this, our important document called the ESMP. So going further on ESMP, we say ESMP is typically required for projects that have potential adverse environmental and social impact. So it's not every project that ESIA is conducted in. So some projects can have very low risk, some have medium and high risk. So for you to carry out ESIA, your project must have what we call the medium to high risk category. So it will be within this category. So what are those projects that have been established that have medium to high risk? Some of them are listed here. Infrastructure projects such as airports, seaports, railway and metro line, roads, highway, bridges. Energy projects like hydropower, wind or solar farms, and like the one that is ongoing in many places now is the solar farms, where you have a lot of solar panels taking up acres of land. So you see that because one of the for ESIA, you consider the amount of land that a particular project is going to take. That will determine the category you're going to place it. So some solar farms, not the solar panels you put on your roof. When you talk about solar farms, you're talking about very large scale solar farm, oil and gas exploration, transmission lines. If you look at most transmission lines, you have what we call right of ways. You see them taking up a large expanse of land. Then water and sanitation projects like dams and reservoir irrigation system, water treatment plants. In terms of industry, these are projects that have medium to high risk impact. You talk about industrial projects such as manufacturing facility, mining and quarrying, which is part of, we are going to look at it when we look at quarrying industry, or that also has to do with cement manufacturing. We have chemical plants, cement factories, okay, is even there. Then urban and development project, housing project that will take up, people will be displaced people's farm will be taken up. They are also classified as a medium to high risk. Then agricultural and forest projects such as commercial agriculture, logging and forest clearance. Then tourism project, where you need to forgo your land for large-scale resorts or ecotourism in sensitive areas. So we'll still be looking at CE-sPESS because it's very, very important. So the first thing we looked at types. We say types. The first thing we looked at there is types of project that require an CE-sPESS. So the next thing we look at is nature of project that require CE-sPESS. So an CE-sPESS is required when the project one has significant environmental risk. It affects social system, which include resettlement and displacement of persons. It will impact indigenous people, alters livelihood, especially those that depend on the natural environment for their source of livelihood, like the farmers and the fishermen. It's also located in or near sensitive areas. When we talk about sensitive area, we're talking about areas that accommodate natural resources like wetland, rivers, or coastals, and areas that also contain some cultural heritages. You can see in communities, you will see communities that will tell that this is in our place here, we call it Alamo, we call it the devil's forest, where the gods exist. You only go there for certain things or for some rituals. So if a project will be cutting through some of these their cultural heritages, it means that it will be affected. Then also nature projects that triggers environmental or social safeguards. So sorry for that interruption, please. So we'll also look at a project that has cumulative or long-term effect. So in some projects, if you take it individually, it will not have any effect. But if you now look at other projects occurring within that same environment, it will now have an impact invariably. And projects that have long-term sustainability concerns. So we'll now take, we said that in CE-sPESS tends to look at mitigation, monitoring, and institutional measures. So we'll look at some case studies here. One of it is, let's look at, the first one there is Dangote Cement Plant, located in Abajana in Kogi State. What is the mitigation measure? Implementation of dust control measures, such as bag filters and water sprinklers to reduce air pollution. That is a mitigation measure, trying to reduce dust and particles that will emanate as a result of the cement projects or activities going on during the production. Then you look at monitoring measures. What are those monitoring measures? You do what we call regular monitoring of air quality and noise level. Because this is a factory that is situated initially in a serene environment. We'll be doing quarrying. There are a lot of machines will be coming in and going out. Lorries will be coming in and going out, raising both dust and also air pollution and also noise. So it is also very, very important that you do regular monitoring of these two important factors, the air quality and noise level, because it impacts on humans that live within that area. Then what is the institutional measures? One, it is incumbent on that company to establish what we call community liaison office. What is the work of this community liaison office? An important aspect of their work is to address concerns and grievances from the locals, because once in a while, one or two persons will have their own complaint. And in having that, that will not act as an interface between the company and the locals to avoid people to to avoid people suffering from the activities of the cement company. So once they lay their complaint, the liaison office is supposed to communicate it to the company so that the company will now take it up and find a way of addressing it. Because if it is not addressed, the tendency is that some of their grievances may stop operation. And if operation is stopped, you will not be able to meet up with your customer need, and it will affect your income generation. Another one we have there is, let's take case number 2. Shell Petroleum Development Company, oil production. It is in Niger Delta. What is the mitigation measure? These measures are usually properly written in the CE-sPESS. Implementation measures to prevent oil spills, such as pipeline coating and cathode protection. The essence of that cathode protection is when, as damage occurs, the cathode protection will send signal to their head office to now alert them that there is erosion of the pipeline and requires fixing before it will cause major hazard. So repairs will be carried out. Then if you do coating tends to fortify the pipeline from rusting and also easy damage by vandals. These are some of the mitigation measures that will be properly laid out in the CE-sPESS. Then the monitoring measures, regular monitoring of pipeline integrity. So once in a while, the company must have a template of proper monitoring of the pipeline that is laid to make sure that you prevent spill, because once spill occurs, the damage will be terrible on the environment, because most of the people that have given up their land for some of these projects are farmers. And if the spill now occurs in areas that the pipeline cuts into rivers, where they also have, which is the source of their water and also source of their protein, like the shrimps, the crayfishes, and also the fishes. It means that it also affects their means of livelihood and also their income. Not to talk about the health hazards that oil spill will lead to, the pollution of their water that serves as source of water for their consumption. Then institutional measures usually has to do with establishment of community engagement program to address concerns, because most of the locals might also see areas that the project owners might not see, and they will lay complaints. And if there are areas that requires address, it will be addressed on time. So we also have case number 4 and case number 3, which you can look up as you study this material yourself. Then let's now go into the crux of the matter, the ESIA, which is our environmental and social impact assessment. It's a process. Remember, we said that it's a process that assesses, that predicts adverse environmental and social impact of projects. So it's a process, and it starts with screening and goes into scoping to baseline data collection, then to because after collecting data and scoping, you should now be able to predict the possible impacts. And you now go into mitigation measures. Then you look at alternative. What are the alternatives? Whereby mitigation measure will not work. Then you go into stakeholder engagement, environmental and social management plan, which we've looked at here. Then reporting, then review and decision making. Then finally, you go into implementation and monitoring. Then as the project kickstarts, you now go into auditing and review. Then we start with screening. That's the first process. So what is screening? Screening determines if an ESIA is required in the first instance. So the first thing you do if a report is submitted to you is to check. You can do desktop screening. You check to see if this particular project requires ESIA. You can go into your books. If you go into your books, you check. So because already we said that it is categorized into high, medium, and low. If during the screening you now find out that your project is is of low risk, you don't need to go any further. You stop at that screening stage and ask the project proponents or those that submitted your work for that project to go ahead with their work, and you can now do your monitoring as the work go on. But if in the process of screening, you now realize that the work, that the project is categorized as medium to high risk project, you go into the next stage of scoping. So what does scoping do? Scoping defines the boundaries and scope of ESIE. It identifies the key environmental and social issues to be addressed. We say that scoping is where it is the crux of the entire thing. It determines the baseline studies and data collection. So what are those steps? It involves consulting with the stakeholders and understanding their concerns and expectations. It defines the spatial and temporal boundaries of the assessment. It also identifies potential impacts to be evaluated. So under scoping, there are things we do. You say scoping, identify the issues that really matters. What are those issues that really matters? What does the project aim to achieve? Why are you doing this project? Which is the objective of the project? That's the issues that really matter. What people and what areas will be affected? Now you're not talking about the spatial and temporal boundaries. What are the boundaries of this project? How far will the project go? How will stakeholders be involved? It also has to do with the temporal boundaries. What are the potential impacts? Are there alternatives? Well, we'll now talk about alternative analysis. So if this project is done, are there other things we can do? Are there other locations for this project? Are there other projects we can carry out that have no impact compared to this particular project we are talking about? Can we take an alternative location? Are there alternatives that have environmental and social advantages? We put that into consideration. Scoping is creative and it is participatory. It is creative in the sense that it is not a one-off thing. It's something that everybody puts their heads together, and in the process of putting heads together, you have the better outcome. That better outcome will now aid in decision making. Now, we talked about what are those environmental and social impact you consider in ESIE. When you talk about environmental impact, you're talking about air and water pollution, noise and vibration, because you're talking about, you can construction company coming with equipment that will be vibrating the walls of your house. And maybe in the local community, most of their houses were built with mud that have very poor foundation. And you're not bringing in heavy machineries. And this heavy machinery will keep vibrating the ground in order to fortify it for the road construction. And because of that, as the vibration is going on, the walls of your house will be cracking. These are part of the challenges. Habitat destruction. In the course of your work, as you're also bringing in these machineries that are heavy-duty machinery, they end up affecting the environment, fragmenting the habitat. And if those that are involved if you are assuming you are a hunter and the environment is fragmented, it means that your means of livelihood, some of the animals within that locality will relocate because you've more or less distorted their route of movement. So they will relocate to other environments. So you end up not getting your gains. So what it means that it will affect your means of livelihood, your income. They will also look at projects that can affect soil, also sedimentation and climate change, whereby you end up, we've talked about project that will lead to, assuming project is a mining project that will be refining oil, and you end up flaring gases every now and then. Invariably, there will be a change in the environment of that area. Then what are those social impact? We know we are talking about ESIA, social, environmental, and social impact. What are the social impacts? Community displacement and resettlement, health and safety risk, economic impact. Some will be positive, some will be negative. Some will gain, some will lose. Some will lose their means of livelihood. Some, their shops will be removed because of road construction, because of their farms will also be used as part of the area for construction. So you might be relocated to places where you might not have the kind of soil quality, that fertile land that we are using initially. Even if you're resettled, maybe you will be moved from the land you inherited from your parents that has a lot of memories that might affect even your social well-being. Your family cohesion might also be thrown apart. You are assuming you can imagine those that are used to have family houses in the present capitals of some cities now. You now end up that particular family is now separated into different locations in that capital cities. So you might end up not even knowing who is your cousin or who is your uncle as time goes on. And in communities where you don't do, you're not supposed to marry or even have a relationship with your relations. And if your children did not understand this, they might end up having relationship, and that will cause problems that you might not even, spiritual problems that you might not know that is what is affecting you in the long run. At this stage, I don't know if anybody has something to add before we continue. But if you don't have, we continue. If you have anything to say, you can say it now. Or do I continue? Do I go ahead? Hello? Are you still with me? Hello? Hello? So we'll look at, we'll take each of these ESIA one. So we've taken screening, we've taken scoping. So we will go to the next one, which is baseline data. So the baseline data connection involves collecting data on social and on environmental and social conditions of the project area. As you can see from the diagram there, you can see my diagram is showing areas where, just look at this market. Just imagine that this market is so data collected may include physical, biological, and socio-economic data. Under the physical, you look at the climate, you look at air quality, soil, and water resources. And also, biological, you now collect data from the flora and fauna, the habitat, and also the nature of the biodiversity within that area. The socio-economic environment, that will now require looking at the demographic, the land use, and also the cultural heritage and socio-economic activity happening within that area of coverage of your project. We look at the next one, the impact prediction and evaluation. Having been able to go through scoping, you've collected data, then based on what you're getting from your data, You'll be able to identify potential environmental and social impact of that project. It will now help you to predict the magnitude, the extent, and duration of the impact which your project is going to cause to the environment and the social economic well-being of the impacted community. It will also help you to evaluate the significance of the predicted impact. Then we'll now talk about mitigation measure, which we said that these mitigation measures need to be properly documented in the CE-sPESS. You propose measures to avoid, minimize, mitigate, or compensate for adverse impact. There are some impact that you cannot do anything about it. All you just need to do is to find measures to mitigate. I mean, you find measures to compensate, because if you try to avoid, no way. Try to minimize, no way. You try to mitigate, no way. Then what do? You compensate. So when it has to do with things like relocation, you have to compensate. If it means paying for buildings, you do that. You incorporate these measures into the project design and also planning. Then we talked about alternative analysis. This alternative analysis tends to assess different project alternatives, including the no project options. In this case, you compare alternative to identify the most suitable option of it all. Then the seventh one there is the stakeholder engagement. I think the next lecturer will take you more on this, but it is important that you engage communities that will be affected. And who are those stakeholders you look at? You look at the government authorities, the communities, the NGOs, and other stakeholders that matter. They have things to do. They have input to make. And you must address some of their input, some of their concerns, and you incorporate them into your project implementation strategies. Then the number 8 there is environmental and social management plan, which we've talked so much about. So we'll go into reporting. Number 9. Document the findings of your ESI in a comprehensive report, which we say is the ESM. Include description of the project, baseline conditions, impact predictions, and measures in the CE-sPESS. We'll look at number 10, which is review and decision making. Finally, having taken up all this data, you need to now review and you go through all what you have done. Then there is a time for decision making. You submit your report to the regulatory authorities for their review, because in most cases, the impact assessment is carried out by specialists, carried out by experts. So after that, because some of these experts are more or less contracted by the project proponents or those that intend to win such projects. So when they submit their reports, the authorities will now review what they have submitted, comparing what they have in their own stock, and see how they are going to use it to take their decision. So you make decision based on what is presented to you. And also, if there are additional information that you need, you also call for it. Then if you've taken that decision, you go to the next step, which is implementation and monitoring. If the project is approved, then you go into the implementation measure. You implement the CE-sPESS during project construction, project operation, and project decommissioning. In your CE-sPESS is going to identify every aspect of measures that will be taken in the project construction stage, in the project operation stage, and also in the commissioning when you may have concluded your work within that area that has been designated for such project. Then you conduct what we call continuous monitoring to ensure that effectiveness of mitigation measures are always complied with at all times, because most persons or most companies, after initial compliance, as the project goes on, if it's a project that will last for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, after complying initially, subsequently, they will back out and continue to destroy the environment without taking cognizance of what is written in the CE-sPESS. And that is why that ESMP is very, very important, because in the time of litigation, you need to, because that ESMP will give you the baseline data, which you're going to use. That you said between this time and this time, you will do this. At this stage to this stage, you will carry out this. You will take these measures. If this happens, this is what we are going to do. If you also have your proper documentation within those in the community, you'll be able to do, you have a good litigation. And that is why the Ogonis were able to win their cases, because they had good records of how the oil companies destroyed their environment. And you can see what is going on there with the high prep project. They are trying to reclaim that environment back for them to use for their use, and also farming and other anthropogenic activity that benefits the immediate environment. Now we'll now look at the principles. The first thing, we looked at the process, then we'll look at the principles. What are those principles? Principles are those guidelines that guides the process, because you cannot carry out effective ESIA without following the guiding principles of ESIA. So where do we start from? These principles include sustainability. In carrying out ESIA, you must aim to promote sustainable development by ensuring that the project contributes positively to the environment and also to the social well-being of the people living in that community. And also, while you're doing that, you also minimize negative impact. And we are told that you always promote the positive impact. Then the next thing you look at, also integrate environmental and social concerns into decision-making processes to support long-term ecological baseline. Then look at the precautionary measures. What are you going to look at? You say it's better safe than sorry. ESIA applies to precautionary principle, which suggests that if there is no potential risk of significant harm to the environment or human health, precautionary measures should be taken, even if some cause and effect relationships are not fully established or scientifically known. Always be precautious in everything you're doing in any project. So that's why we say it's better to be safe than sorry. When uncertainties exist, there is limited scientific knowledge or data about the potential impact, it's better you don't go on. Potential harm is significant. The potential impact could be severe or irreversible. So it's always good to put caution as a flag. Always flag things that will lead to negative impact. The next thing we look at is public participation and stakeholder engagement. It is always said that engage the stakeholders early on time. Engage them early in any project, such that when you're taking decision, the decision will be based on the contribution of the stakeholder. The next thing is transparency. You should be open and transparent in dealing with stakeholders. Don't hide any information. Any information that you know that will affect the project, be open to them, be accountable. So that at every point in time of any project, you always say, yes, we discussed this and this was our agreement. This was what we arrived at. When this issue came up, this is what we agreed on. Yes, somebody said this. You'll be open, because as time goes on, things will continue to emanate in your project. That is why, as a project manager, in the process, in the ESIA process, you make sure that every bit of detail is properly attended to and also explained to the stakeholders, and decisions will be taken based on stakeholders' concern and their worries. If you're able to do that, you find out that the stakeholders will trust you, the communities will trust you, even the other how will I put it? Funding agencies will also trust you, so that even if you finish a particular project and you're applying for another one, the tendency of getting that project approved will be very, very high. So we look at, there's also comprehensive scope. Yes, it should be comprehensively to assess all potential environmental and social. Don't leave anything to chance. Look at both indirect and cumulative effects, such that you have a holistic approach in ensuring that all significant impacts are well identified and properly managed. You must take all this into consideration, because as a project manager or somebody involved in any project, you wouldn't want your project to stop halfway. Because if you stop halfway, you lose a lot. And the tendency of even getting the project kick-started again will be, because if a project that involves you hiring so many equipment that you pay on daily basis and your project is stopped as a result of something that was identified that you were hiding from the stakeholders, it means that you're going to spend more, because in project implementation, look at the cost of such project. Then scientific rigor and evidence-based evidence should be based on sound scientific method and reliable data. That is why you must use experts. In baseline data collection, you use experts. You don't just bring in, this one is my brother, give him job. You must have those that will do critical analysis of each stage of that process, such that you must almost take, you should be able to take care of every angle of that project that will lead to that project being stopped halfway. So if you use expert, you find out you provide robust understanding of the potential impact of that project. So, and also provide effective mitigation strategy. Because these are the two things. You've noticed the impact. What are those strategies? The strategies that you're going to use should come from a strategy or somebody who has sound knowledge of that area. So it's very, that's why you use expert from the social aspect, the sociologists, the scientists, and also the engineers to make up your teams. Why the scientists will be taking care of the environmental aspects, the social scientists will be taking care of the social aspect, then the engineers will not take care of the technical aspect. So when you bring this thing together, this expert together, they will be able to carry out something that is robust and will be sustainable. We talk about integrated approach. What does that mean? It means that you integrate all environmental and social into one single thing, because there are interrelationships. So this integrated approach ensures that interrelated impacts are evaluated together, providing a more comprehensive, because as you go, you will see things coming up. But if you're able to do good ESIA process, you will find out that along the line, you must have attended to each of these issues that will come up along the line. Then we'll talk about it's also an interactive process. It's a continuous process. It's not a one-off thing. As you allow the continuous, as feedback comes, you improve on the aspects that you didn't see. You should allow change. So if anything comes up along the process of carrying out any project, you should make room for change and also to evaluate your project. If it means changing design, you change it. And as long as that design may not affect the project very well, because if you've done project evaluation and do ESIA, you find out that any feedback might just be minor corrections that will occur. Hierarchy of mitigation, mitigate based on hierarchy, which from avoid, minimize, compensate for it. So the first thing to do is to avoid completely. You minimize, then you restore, then you compensate. So hierarchy prioritizes prevention, preventing negative impact, prevented completely. So the issue of compensation and also restoration will not come up. The respect of human rights, respect every person in the process of ES. I don't say that this man, after all, is a poor person. There's nothing we can do. They can do nothing. Go ahead with the project. We hinder your project from continuing and getting to the logical conclusion. So the process considers potential disabled, the crippled, every person. Consider every person, even the so-called marginalized group, always put them into consideration so that they will not put what we call putting sansan into your gari. You do that because we will look at that when we look at project managers. The cumulative impact, we discuss that one project might not have a specific impact, but when you compare them with other projects happening within that existing environment, it will now become cumulative. Then adaptive. ESIA supports adaptive management, which involves adjusting mitigation measures and management strategy based on ongoing monitoring and feedback. So it is an open thing. As you work, as long as you've done good ESIA projects, you should not be afraid. Most of the things that will come up along the line will just be minor measures that you can handle and go on with your work. Then we go into objective, or what are the objectives of social and environmental impact assessment. The first one is, the first thing you do in this is to identify potential impact. That is the first objective. The next thing is you avoid. These are the objective. You avoid, you get. You can see the diagram here is showing the hierarchy of control. The next one, you promote development. Integrate environmental planning, whereby you look at the social, the environment, and the economic. Then you have what we call sustainable impacts. Then you look at enhanced positive impact. If you're able to put these together, these are some of those objectives. This we enhance the impact of your project within the area of work and within the time frame in which you want this project to take place. Other objectives include ensure informed decision. Like we said before, if you have experts in your project planning, if you do comprehensive ESIA, your decisions will be finesse. Your decision will be almost 99% accurate. You will not have any fear of your project stopping along the line. It will also facilitate regulatory compliance, because if you've taken the right action, regulators will not have any problem. We say, no. You, after reviewing your work, they will tell you to move ahead as long as you've done the right thing. Engaging stakeholders, these are the objectives. It helps you to engage stakeholders to help you do your work properly. Enhance transparency and accountability. We talked about support adaptive money, enables ongoing monitoring and adjustment of project based on new information and changing conditions. Find out that what new information we do will be to help your project, not to destroy your project. Because if you've done your baseline studies very well, taking out the right thing, any new information that comes up is not going to stop your project. Any new information will rather help you to justify the processes you've taken up ab initio. So that is that. Then we look at what we call CE-sPESS. This is remember we said that projects tend to identify social and environmental impact. So CE-sPESS is what we call environmental and social management system. This helps in screening, in trying to discover those projects that have high or moderate risk. You use what we call environmental and social management system. So what does it do? It helps to identify project scope and depth of your project. And that will now depend on the nature and complexity of your project and the significance of your project. So when you look at the nature and complexity of a project, you will not be able to based on the nature of your project, it will help in its classification. And it is this CE-sPESS screening process that will help you to do proper classification of your project into low, into high or moderate risk category. So the next thing, how do you now identify that your project is of high or moderate risk? So we look at the step-by-step approach to identify these high or moderate risk. The first one is project scope and scale. Large-scale project with significant land use changes, infrastructural development, or resource extraction, like your mining, extraction, you high environmental and social risk. The location of your project is also very, very important. If you look at projects that are situated within environment that we call it sensitive environment, or environment within biodiversity hotspots, areas that are protected, they are usually nature of activity. It assesses the nature of project activity like construction, operation, and decommission. So activity with potential for habitat destruction, pollution, habitat fragmentation, like I've said before, whereby you fragment, you have a road crossing a particular quiet or serene environment. It means that you fragmented the habitat. It will affect that environment and also affect the nature of activities that goes on within that environment. Water and air pollution, because you're constructing a cement factory that will be emitting dust. You're constructing treatment plant. Or waste treatment plant. You find out that within that environment, the air in that environment, the environmental air in that area will not be good for human inhalation, and it will contain a lot of particles depending on if it is PM10 or PM5 particles, or PM 2.5 to PM 5 particles, which are regarded as particles of environmental impact or health impact. It's very, very important that you be able to classify them as project of high risk. The potential social impact, we talked about that. Project that will require people taking up, resettling people, displacing community, changing the livelihood. Maybe I'm a farmer. You now want to tell me that once my farm is taken, I'm going to change my means of livelihood. Project that will affect cultural heritage. You've talked about that before. You classify them as project of high or moderate risk. We also have regulatory requirements. Projects that are classified that you find out that some regulatory, you say that this project is already prescribed. That it means that once your project is classified as prescribed, you must carry out CE-sPESS. It means that it's of high or moderate risk. So just looking at the project, you check under your book review, documentation review, you've already given it a classification as a project of high or moderate risk. They will also look at stakeholders' concern. Depending on what the stakeholders are returning back, stakeholder feedback and local knowledge can help identify potential risks. Maybe you might not know. Stakeholders that are the indigenous person might tell you what you do not know. So what they are bringing back to you might also help you to do your proper classification. Then we talk about cumulative impact. A single project might not have a negative social or environmental impact, but taking it in cognizance to other or with respect to other projects within that environment might now lead to that project being classified as project of high risk. So in Nigeria environment, these things are also put into place. So you can look up that when you read up these materials. So the last aspect of this is the case study that I've lined up here. When we look at case study in the Niger Delta, where proper environmental impact assessment is carried out, like the Niger Delta Oil and Gas Company that did proper environmental impact in Lekki Free Zone Trade Area, which also did proper environmental impact. We also have case studies of projects that didn't carry out proper environmental impact assessment. You also see the consequences of that not taking proper environmental impact, like what is happening presently in Nigeria. Remember the Calabar to Lagos to Calabar coastline project, where people are complaining because the project was hurriedly done. When we go into the next stage of this work, you will see the issues of not doing proper environmental impact assessment. So when you go through the project, the last part, you will see the implication, the consequences of not doing what we call proper environmental impact. So in summary, CE-sPESS is a process that assesses and predicts potential adverse and social environmental impact of development and project. CE-sPESS process develops suitable mitigation measures which are documented in an ESMP. The CE-sPESS process includes the screening, the scoping, the baseline, impact assessment, the environmental management, and monitoring. It is applicable for projects that have high to moderate risk. Public consultation influences development of projects and focuses on the scoping and impact assessment stages, during which information is shared and feedback is sought from the stakeholders. ESIA process considers all stages of development process, including the construction of the facility, site operation, and dismantling and decommissioning of the site, and site restoration. Thank you. So this is the end of this particular session. So we are going to start up the next. Then we'll end up. Okay. So we start by way of introduction. We start by asking what is a project? And from the definition I have there, it is said that a project is an individual or collaborative enterprise that is carefully planned. The word, they are carefully planned to achieve a particular aim. A project can also be defined as characterized by defined objective, specific scope, finite duration, and allocated resources. I love this definition in the sense that it has a defined objectives. And when we looked at those ESIA objectives, it has specific scope, it has area of coverage, it has finite duration. It's very, very important as a project manager that your project will last for you. You can see government officials will tell that this project will be delivered in the next 6 months, that this project will be delivered in 24 months. And resources are allocated based on the duration and the cost of materials within this area, within this time period that your project will last, because of the fluctuation of cost of project materials. Even the amount you pay to your workers is also consequent upon the prevailing circumstances. So that's why project must have a beginning, it must also have an end. And as a project manager, your intention will be to always start your project very well, continue your project, which is the implemented operational period, and also end very well, which is the decommissioning stage. So projects are typically undertaken to meet specific goals. That is why in submitting your ESIA, you must define. Remember when we talk about project, you say where will this project take place? Who are the beneficiaries of this project? What impact will this project have? So you address those specific objectives and go and address the particular need within an organization or community. So who are those people that this project is going to impact on? So a project ideally consists of optimal set of investment-oriented actions based on comprehensive and coherent sector planning, by means of which a defined combination of human and material resources is expected to cause determined amount of economic and social development within a specified period of time. So the components of a project must be precisely defined as to the character of the project, the location of this project, and also the time in which you can see that this location, time is very, very important. Then the resources required, what are those resources required in carrying out a particular project must be well stated and defined. Then what would be the benefits, such as cost savings, increased production, and institutional development as estimated in advance. All these things must be put in place very well for you to carry out this project. So we talked about ESIA and project design. So we don't need to start defining this. We talked about ES identify positive and negative impact caused by a project. This is assessed through an analysis of the effect resulting from interaction between environment and social component and the various activities of a project and its development. So these are some of the projects that we'll look at. And as a project manager, you put all this into consideration. So we talked about projects requiring mandatory ESIA. We talked about large-scale project, mining and drilling, industrial project like factory refineries and power plant, agricultural project like large-scale farming and irrigation scheme, urban development project like housing estate, shopping malls, and what have you. You can see some of the diagrams that I've listed. There are power line, waste treatment, road construction, pipeline laying. They are all listed there. So yes, ISO addresses project environmental and social cost and benefit, which is we've addressed that. But our interest now is the importance of ESIA to project implementation. And we are going to look at it from the angle of risk identification and management, compliance with regulatory requirements, stakeholder engagement and acceptance, optimization of project design and operation, enhance project sustainability, cost saving and risk reduction, they improve corporate reputation. Very, very important. That's why you see Julius Berger is everywhere because of their corporate reputation and brand value. You see them carrying out most very difficult projects. You see them being called to decide. Regulatory and financial consideration are also there. So we start from risk identification and management. Like we've always said, ESIA helps to identify potential environmental and social risks. Why? Why would you want to do that? By understanding these risks early in the planning stage, project managers can implement appropriate mitigation measures to minimize adverse impact and also manage risk effectively throughout the project's lifespan. It's very, very important. Then compliance with regulatory requirements. If you do proper ESIA, you will find out that the issue of saying, did you comply with the regulatory? Because if you're using experts that understand the rudiment, that understand the laws of both the local, international, and national laws, you find out that this project, your project, ESIA would have complied with all the available requirements. Conduct ESIA helps the project manager to navigate complex regulatory frameworks and obtain necessary approvals. Those approvals are very, very, very important for your project to proceed. Because if you don't get those necessary approvals, when the regulatory agencies will come, it becomes a problem. That is why even in starting your project, you will need to invite regulatory agencies. In most projects, regulatory agencies, especially if you're carrying out ESIA, the regulatory agencies are usually there with you. They will follow up on whatever you're doing from the point of sample collection to the point of the laboratory analysis, and also in your stakeholder engagement, they are also there with you. So stakeholder engagement is also another important aspect. It involves engaging stakeholders, which we've listed those stakeholders. Who are those stakeholders? The local authority, your NGOs, and other relevant that gather input, address their concern, and build consensus. What will they do? It helps to effective stakeholder. It will not help. It will help in a more what we call trust and transparency status of your work, of your project. Because if your project boosters or fosters transparency and trust, the local community, the beneficiaries will wholeheartedly accept your work, and it will not reduce the likelihood of opposition and conflict during the implementation stage. Then we'll talk about optimization of project design. If you do what we call proper ESIA, it will provide valuable insight into potential environmental and social impact that may arise from project activity. By so doing, it will now help you incorporate all the consideration in terms of design, because the stakeholders will bring up their own ideas. And if you include stakeholders' ideas into your project design, you will see them accepting your project easily. So project manager can optimize project operation by doing proper what we call stakeholder engagement, because most of the stakeholders are also knowledgeable. In some stakeholder engagement activity, you find out that the stakeholders also engage experts that will stand in for them in that area. And some of their inputs will actually help you as a project manager. Why that work is going on, you listen to them and hear what they are saying. You find out because they are the locals. If you're able to include some of their ideas into your work, telling them at least, okay, you say this or this, look at how you can even refine what they've given to you and letting them know that you've included this in your project design. You will now see them prouding themselves that, yes, I was the one who told them to do this and they've done it. You will now see that others will also be encouraged to key into your project, and it will help your project to get to its logical conclusion. Enhance project sustainability. ESIA promotes sustainable development, ensuring that projects are environmentally and socially responsible and contribute to positive social and economic outcomes. When we talk about sustainability, we're talking about integration of the economic, environment, and social. Given that intercept, they will now have that intercept will help you to have a project that will take its course beautifully without any hindrance. So by addressing environmental and social early in the planning process, project managers can enhance project sustainability, because the social aspect which complains at the economic aspect and also the environment. So you're good to go with that if you're the project manager. So when we talk about cost saving, if you address the environmental and social impact proactively through ESIA, it will help project manager to avoid cost delays. Remember, we said that your project has a timeline and cost is given, cost of material, inflation. So if you also do the right thing, you will not be fined by the regulatory agencies for not following guidelines. Litigation there will be no litigation because you followed all the rules. That's why you also need professionals to advise you. So by investing in upfront planning and mitigation measures, project managers can minimize project risk and achieve cost savings in the long term. So if we look at some of the environmental factors that you put into consideration, talk about non-compliance with regulatory agents. These are part of what causes the delay. Environmental impact assessment, inadequate or late completion of environmental impact assessment affects your project completion, and it also affects the cost. Permitting issues, delays or rejection, also part of due to incomplete or inaccurate application. Environmental accidents, spills, leaks because of poor environmental impact assessment or negligence on the part of your project manager. What are those social impacts that if it is poorly done, it will increase the cost of your project? Community resistance, opposition from local community due to lack of engagement and consultations. Once you are unable to do that as a project manager, don't expect your project to run smoothly, because these people are the people that matters. They are the people that matter. They are the stakeholders. You engage them properly. Land acquisition issues, delays or disputes related to land acquisition and resettlement. That's why you must start early. If you start early, settle all these grievances, especially those that involve both heritage impact and other impact that has to do with the community concerns. Put them into consideration such that you don't have any problem with the community. Then you take care of the regulatory factors, because as regulation change, because regulatory agencies, as they also change their regulatory mandate, you also be able to incorporate that into your activity. Improve corporate reputation, like we said before, and brand value. So demonstrating commitment and environmental social responsibility through ESI can enhance corporate and social responsibility through ESI, and can enhance reputation of such companies that are involved in implementing project. And project managers, if they follow up this, it will help them to be able to manage their project, because projects that are perceived as environmental and socially responsible are more likely to attract support from both investors, both the beneficiaries and other stakeholders, and it will now enhance the long-term success of such project. Regulatory and financial consideration. Many financial institutions and investors require ESIA part of any project as a due diligence process to assess environmental and social risks associated with project. So if you're able to do proper ESIA project process in your project, the project manager will be able to secure finances, or the proponents of project will be able to secure finances from investors, from financing agencies, because they've shown due diligence in carrying out both the present and the past project. So you find out that your project implementation strategy, your project, how will I put it, the way you've taken care of your stakeholders, engagement, the way you have been transparent, will all add up, such that, because when the regulatory agency checks out what you have done before you started implementation, they will know that yes, you are serious about this project, and everything concerning the takeoff and the completion of your project will go smoothly. So I have here listed some regulatory and financial agencies in Nigeria and outside Nigeria that can finance some important project for you. They are all listed here, starting from Federal Ministry of Environment to National Environmental Standard and Regulatory Enforcement Agency, that is the NISRA, to commercial banks like First Bank, Guaranteed Trust. All you companies can also do that, like Shell, Petroleum Development, the Chevron, and what have you. Then the power and energy companies, and World Bank. World Bank sponsors project which we call the Multilateral Institution, African Development Bank, the International Financial Corporation. These are agencies that can finance projects. So I also have written here regulatory and financial. Okay, we looked at some of the consideration that regulatory agencies are involved in. So what I have here are some of the case studies that some companies have been involved in. So you can look up that in your work. So like the first case study I have here is expansion of Dangote cement plant in Abajana in Kogi State, Nigeria. What is the background? What is the work of this company? What do they want to do? Dangote is a Dangote cement company. It's a leading cement manufacturer in Nigeria. He planned to expand his cement plant in Abajana, Kogi State. The expansion aims to increase production capacity from 10 million to 20 million metric tons per year. What is the environmental and social concern? Potential environmental impact on air, water, and noise and habitat were considered. So what are the potential social impact? Displacement of local community, loss of livelihood and cultural heritage. So what are the ESIA process that we are taking? Scoping was involved. So baseline study was carried out, impact assessment was carried, mitigation measures were carried, then public consultations. So I have other case studies that you can follow up on. So when you go through these case studies and you are aligning, you find out that as a project manager, there is no way your project will not succeed. So the first thing you do as a project manager is to make sure that your items concerning ESIA is actually taken, especially if your project is of high or low impact. From the point of ESIA to the point of implementation, making sure that everything concerning stakeholder regulatory agencies are taken, and also in the process of operation, if there are, because we say it's an interactive process. So if there are changes based on prevailing circumstances, you put them into consideration and also find a way of including that in your process, in your project design, in the implementation. At the end of the day, you find out that as a project manager, you have almost 99% of starting your project, operating your project, and decommissioning your project smoothly and within the timeline. Thank you, and God bless you.
you.